Hello and welcome everyone to this important weekly trading video for Tesla. And what we are seeing today in the market is very interesting because Tesla is dropping pre-market, the whole market is down. People are scared of Liberation Day, which is April 2nd on Wednesday, when the Trump tariffs with reciprocity get into effect. So what is going on and what do we think about it? Now, as you know, I think that Tesla is at the precipice of something huge. And these drops might be an enormously attractive opportunity to load up right before this thing could go to the moon. But is it true? Let's take a closer look. Tesla is approaching probably the most important point in its history so far. There's more to come in the future with Optimus, but so far, the launch of Robotaxi in Austin in June might be the most important thing that has happened so far. Why? Well, we'll get to it in a second. It has to do with money and margins. Hey, creating these videos is a lot of work. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Now let's get back to the video. So what we have seen so far, and let me just share a little bit of the stock price here. So over the 6 months, you see here December 17th, that infamous day where it peaked and the Fed came out with a bearish statement. The stock is down tremendously and recently had a 25% rally, 20% rally from 225 to 222, bottom up to that 288 price point last week, but now it's down and in pre-market, as you can see today, minus 5.6%, but in line pretty much with the whole market going down a lot. So what does that all mean for us? Now, I think what's happening here is that the market is very scared. The market is very scared after the auto tariffs coming online last week, 25% on all imported cars and parts of cars. But what we have seen, and I did a video on that, the big winner here for now is Tesla, because Tesla produces most of its cars or all of its cars in the United States domestically. So it's not affected by the tariffs, whereas its competition is heavily affected. So the fact that Tesla dropped so much is very nonsensical and it's probably just technical with the market, because the market is scared of Wednesday. Now, I believe this Wednesday scare, and a lot of pros say that, is a typical buy the news, right? Sell the rumor, buy the news, because it's bad news in theory. These tariffs kick in. Reciprocity tariffs will lead to lower tariffs across the board because countries will realize if you put tariffs on the United States, the United States will now put tariffs on Wednesday on your goods. That already led to some of the tariffs going down because countries don't want US tariffs on themselves. And if they lower their tariffs, the US is going to lower their tariffs. That's the logic here. It's a misconception that this is bad, in my opinion, for global trade. And markets are going to realize that once these tariffs are actually coming out and going into effect, because don't forget, right now, no one even knows what these tariffs are. The Trump administration on Wednesday is going to announce the exact tariffs. And the market hates nothing more than unknowns. So we just know a lot of tariffs are going to come on Wednesday, but no one knows which tariffs are actually coming and how high they are. On Wednesday, this will all be clarified. In my opinion, that will lead to clarity and potentially an April rally. Of course, you never know, but this is the most likely outcome. So the markets at this point understand more and more how Trump is operating. There will be a huge, huge wave of clarification that comes on Wednesday. Running up into Wednesday, there will be more uncertainty. So today is probably a negative day. Tomorrow might be another negative day. Wednesday might be a very positive day. And then we might be off to the races. Now, that's just talking about the markets. But what is happening with Tesla? Let's take a look why this Robo-taxi launch in June is so important financially. And after that, let's take a quick look how likely it is that this is actually going to happen. So first of all, let's get to the financials. The financials, here is my little model. I have some very, very conservative or more or less conservative assumptions about the Robotaxi launch schedule and scaling schedule if it is actually being launched now. So as you can see, my assumptions for 2025 are very, very humble. I'm just assuming 50, literally 50 robotaxis in 2025 that are commercially in operation. I think that's definitely lowballing it, but doesn't matter. 10,000 in 2026, right, 0.01 thousand, which is 10,000. In 2026, this is extremely conservative. And then in 2027, 200,000. Well, now we are getting up there. And then 400,000 in 2028. These are my manual inputs. From there, I'm assuming pretty significant growth, because once you have robotaxi in the streets and they fully work, full autonomy is achieved, or at least more or less full autonomy with some remote operators, and your price point per mile driven gets below that critical $1.50 or whatever it is, you will see a complete disruption. Because believe me, like, once people see, instead of paying $3 for an Uber, they can now pay half or less than half for a robotaxi. No one cares anymore about Tesla, brand, Elon, politics. People will vote with their wallets. They're going to say, I can't afford like spending more money than I need on transportation. And everyone is going to switch to robotaxi, and there's no competition, as we know. Because what competitor can offer $1 per mile robotaxis across the United States without going broke? Who has the technology and who can afford it? Who can manufacture these cars and deliver these technologies at that price? No one, only Tesla. And that means Tesla has an economics advantage that no one can beat. Definitely not Waymo. There's no one else on the horizon. If Chinese companies figure it out, they will not be allowed to operate millions of robotaxis in the United States for national security reasons. I said this 100 times. I still believe it. So there will be a huge scaling operation from there on. Now, what does it all mean for the actual revenue and the margins? And here, pay attention. This is very important. Why this is so transformative for the stock. Now let's zoom to 2030. If that all happens according to plan, according to this plan, which is pretty conservative, I mean, 50 robot taxis, that's not a lot. So what you see is a pretty crazy, massive effect on revenue. We are talking about $126 billion in 2030 in robotaxi revenue. Now, Tesla makes 100 billion roughly in revenue today, 98 billion, 2024. That means the robotaxi business alone will be bigger than the entire existing Tesla business, even under these conservative assumptions. But now look at this, much more important. The EBITDA of the robotaxi line will be $109 billion, earnings before interest and taxes. $109 billion a year, because the margin is so high. This is effectively a software business. 109 billion in EBITDA added to the bottom line, up from what? From 12 billion in 2024. So Tesla's EBITDA will go up just because of robotaxi by a factor of over 10, or roughly 10. 9 times the EBITDA. So that alone would catapult the stock by 9x if the price earnings ratio stays the same. But what is important is from there, you will see an exponential, insane growth of EBITDA, potentially reaching 2 trillion in margin just through robotaxi by the mid 2030s, 2034 actually, because the robotaxi market is so enormous. So that is the reason why this is also exciting. But if you follow Tesla and all the smart Tesla tubers, you probably know that robotaxi is transformative. I just wanted to share these numbers so you understand what that means. And by the way, the non-risk discounted the non-risk discounted share price in 2030 would be $5,000 per share, just because of robotaxi. That is not risk discounted, just cash flow interest discounted. And that doesn't take into account Optimus and everything else. So the price is much higher. My price target, 11,000 actually. So let's put this aside and say, we get it. This is a huge opportunity. But why is it so important what happens now in June? Because everyone who's a little informed, everyone who can model out the future a little bit and has some Google Sheets or my model that you can get in pioneerlands.net, by the way, pioneerlands.net, look at the description, join us, become a citizen of the future. We are the pioneers. We look into these things and we predict the future more accurately, and we allow ourselves, by sharing intel, by sharing models like that, to make better investment decisions. So check it out. You will see the model very soon. I uploaded tonight, by the way. at pioneerlands.net, link in the description. But why is it so important what's happening now? And why do we have to pay so close attention? And why is the share price right now so potentially attractive? Because once you understand the future and you understand this is coming and you understand that FSD and robotaxi is the greatest opportunity Tesla ever had, not as big as Optimus. Optimus is coming soon, but for now, robotaxi. Everything boils down to the question, is it actually happening? Because if it's all fantasy and FSD will never happen, if they fail to roll it out, if they fail technology-wise, all these great projections don't matter. But if they succeed in rolling it out, and if we know the point in time when they succeed, we have an enormous alpha. We have an enormous investment advantage, different from Wall Street, because Wall Street has to wait because of the way they operate. They have to wait until it actually happens. They are not allowed culturally to say these things before it actually happens. So they have a huge over proportional kind of, premium on the risk of saying something that is not reality yet, whereas we can look into the future and price it in. And so here's the point why it's so important, why you should pay absolutely attention over the next weeks, we're talking weeks. The official plan was to launch Robotaxi with Cybercab, by the way. Not just Model Ys and Model 3s, but Cybercab, this cool new thing that is happening in June in Austin. Now, we have a lot of confirmations that make me much more confident in that timeline than I was even a month ago, even 2 weeks ago. That make me much more confident this is actually happening, which would be huge because all these future trillions in margin. The question is, when do they become reality in forward-looking models? And the answer is once commercial robotaxis are available and we see demand picking up and we get the first set of metrics on the robotaxis in. And if they launch in June, there's a certain chance that in the July earnings call of Tesla, we will already get some of these numbers. We will understand demand, we will understand pricing, we will understand margin. And if these things actually are part of the earnings call in July, and the numbers actually look good, that they are booked out, there is demand, there are no major hiccups, and we hear something about the margins. And all of these metrics, if we hear about them, are very likely to blow Uber out of the air. And if that happens, I think the impact on the stock and what the analysts think will be huge. Uber will be dead immediately, and Tesla will go through the roof if all that happens. So the indications that this actually will happen are now all over the place. Lars, the head of engineering, said, yes, we are on track. Franz, the head of product design, the chief designer of Tesla, says, June is happening. Elon said, yesterday again, we are on track for a June launch. And we have to understand, June is only 10 weeks away, mid of June. So that is pretty huge. At this point, if all of them are doubling down on the timeline and it's only 10 weeks away, the probability that it happens goes up exponentially. The official Tesla account on X has tweeted, we are on track. So this all becomes very, very bullish, and I'm reducing my risk discount continuously now. And what we also see is that Cybercab is more and more sure to be part of this launch, which was another big question, right? Is it just Model 3s and Ys, which would be slightly disappointing on a PR perspective because the world is going to look at it like, how is this different? It's just normal Tesla cars. The fact that you will have a no steering wheel Cybercab as part of that June launch in Austin would be huge. And I said it again and again. But now we see it again, evidence all over the place that this will be the case because we see all these robo-taxis. We saw at least 3 simultaneously with the drone guy watching that at Gigafactory Austin, Texas, like driving around, driverless. And so why would they constantly test these Cybercabs? Because they are going to roll them out. And if they do that, it will be at least 10, I estimate more like 20 Cybercabs, plus a bunch of Model 3s and Model Ys. So this becomes very real. And I was a big skeptic on the timeline. I said, I don't see it. If I watch all these FSD version 13 videos, I still see hiccups. But now I'm becoming more and more confident that Tesla will actually launch this thing in June, that it will work. And the big next question is, will we see enough of them launch? Will we see flawless rollout? And will we see reports in the earnings report in July on these numbers. Because then we need to get beyond the launch. What happens after the launch? We need to see good numbers rolling in commercially, and we need to see saturation of Austin. And ideally, we see 100 or 200 of these Tesla robotaxis in Austin, meaning they will wipe out the existing Uber base in Austin. And here's what I also discussed with some of you guys to understand, why it's so important. If we actually see not only the launch, but a focused approach by Tesla to wipe out the Austin shared driving, market, this will be huge. It's not about scaling into other markets so fast. It's about showcasing in Austin that we cannot just launch that stuff, but that we can absolutely annihilate the competition, Lyft and Uber and other shared driving services, shared ride services. And if we can show that in Austin, every analyst is going to model it in nationwide. Because then the question how fast you can roll this out doesn't even matter. Once people get it, this is not a competitive thing to Waymo or Uber. It's going to be a third of the price or less than Waymo. It's going to be super profitable compared to Waymo. And it's going to create massive cash flows for Tesla. But most importantly, it will knock out any competitor. And if we only need to see that in one city, we only need to see that in Austin, and the analysts will do their job. We always complain about the analysts, but once we have these numbers in, they will connect the dots and they will see, yes, this stock is going to 10,000, or let's say to 5,000. They will still ignore Optimus, but they will agree then it's going to 2.5 to 5,000 by 2030. Everyone is going to up their price targets to these numbers whenever that happens. And I think the earliest it could happen is in July in the earnings call. So that is why this is all very important. This is why we have to pay very close attention. This is why we should not get distracted by these, Liberation Day talks on Wall Street about Wednesday and the tariffs and Tesla dropping now. Who the hell cares? This is noise, not just noise. It might be the greatest buying opportunity that we will ever get again in Tesla. So that is how I see the things. I will do next on Wednesday or Thursday, let's see this week, come out with an options strategy video where I share my thoughts on leaps, on long-term Tesla options versus short-term Tesla options. I'm still doing some testing, which ones I like and what the right blend is. If you're just long-term shareholders all in, that's always the safest, easiest. But given this crazy situation, I am very, very hungry for options. I have a lot of leaps right now. And this is a very unique setup where the stock goes down while Robotaxi comes closer. You're basically having a $250 stock that should be at, roughly $500 right now based on a fair value model looking forward. And if that June thing happens, we're talking about much higher prices. So it's a very unique setup here where options might make a lot of sense. Of course, there's risk. If there's a major hiccup, that is bad for the options. But that's what we are going to look at later this week. So make sure you subscribe and like the video, and hope to see you very soon.